So, welcome to Walsall United WSC.
Hi guys, Natalie for United WSC. I'm here with journalist Sandra Brobbey. Is that right? Did I say it right? Yes, fantastic. And, usually on a Wednesday we talk about women's football and, I suppose women in women's football and how we feel, even though we're fans, but, we try to get some players on, see how they feel about things as well. But Sandra, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Do you want to tell people who've maybe not heard of you before or where you write and things you like what how you got into women's football and all that kind of stuff? Just tell the audience about yourself a bit.
Okay, so I currently cover women's football, mostly WSL related games and stories for Sun Sport. And in terms of my background, so prior to joining Sun Sport, which was I joined about maybe 2-3 years ago, I used to kind of, cover non-league men's football games for a while, for a few years, just like mostly I'm based in London, so I was covering games to do with either Dulwich Hamlet, which is a South London-based men's non-league team, or occasionally another team called Tooting and Mitcham, which is where Michael Antonio, who plays for West Ham, started out. But I've been covering WSL stuff for a couple of seasons now, and mostly writing for Sun Sport and going to a few games here and there.
That's good. Obviously, people might not. I know sometimes people might not like the story, might not read it, but I mean, do you do interviews with players? What kind of things? I know you talked about, you cover it, but is it mainly London teams or is it all teams? What do you specifically do?
Well, most as teams as possible as I can. I mean, in terms of people I've interviewed, I've spoken a couple of times to like Hope Powell on the topic that we're about to kind of talk about, interview players ahead of games and what have you. So a mixture of players across all clubs. I've spoken to people like, there's quite a few. So I've done like an interview with Ruby Mace, for example, at Man City, just talking about why she joined there, what her hopes are for a career. So a mixture of things from and then also just like reporting on games and that and the like.
Yeah. Obviously, like you said, you talked about the topic that we're about to go on to, and for me, it's really an important topic. It's close to my heart. It's something that I think we need more of in the WSL, and that's diversity. I think we need to see more people like myself, like yourself, like Hope in the WSL. And there's a lot of talk about it, but then I still don't think there's enough talk about it. So what do you think when I say something like that, Sandra? Because even when I look at, say, journalist, and I just see yourself, really, a black woman, and it makes me sort of happy to see. What do you think when you think of sort of diversity or lack of in the WSL?
Well, the thing that I obviously I pay attention to what I've been told from the people who've been in the game for the longest. And the one thing that's come up and it's been reported on in various outlets is like, the low numbers of, black or minority ethnic players at the highest level of the women's game. It's an interesting topic. And one of the things that's come up recently with the international games coming up is just the kind of, lack of diversity at international level within the, for England, for example. I mean, obviously with football, it's about talent. It's about you're there. It's not about it's about the talent and you being, good enough to represent the team, whether it's a team at club level, whether it's a team at international level. The one thing that seems to come up is whether there's, whether regional training centres for clubs, for example, are becoming too middle class. That's something I've heard from different, like managers, coaches, saying that, regional training centres are no longer in the areas where, not as prevalent as they are in the areas that are quite diverse in urban, I hate using that term, but urban areas, and that they're more now in the leafy areas where you might not have as diverse a mix of young, up-and-coming, talented players. So that's something that seems to be coming up, and that's something that seems to be flagged as to why there's a lack of diversity at the higher levels of the women's game.
But the way I see it, I'm a fan. Everyone sort of knows about Man United fans. We just sort of came in 2018, so I think we missed the peak of seeing a lot of like quality. I'll just say it, black, mixed race players. I look at Rachel Yankee, Leanne Sanders, Eni Aluko. I did sort of watch it, but I wasn't sort of involved like we are now. We didn't have, say, Man United Women podcast that we're on today. And I feel like, how is it gone from those numbers? And I know you talk about suburbs and stuff, but I look at the men's academies that, some of them, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to make it one. So how come in the Premier League we've got quite a lot? And I get it, more boys play and all that kind of thing. And you touched on there, not enough black people at there, but I think there are players like you say in the lower leagues. Yes. Have they given a chance? Yeah. There's players there, I look at, say, even the under 23s, the under 19s, there are black players there, and I think, why is it taking longer, say, for them than maybe a white counterpart? I mean, when I say things like this, what's your thoughts and feelings, Sandra? Do you think there's a bit of issues of both?
There's something about more kind of research into what the reasons are. Why is that it gets to a certain point, they might get up to a certain level, up to a certain age group, and then there's a drop off. So there's something about doing more research as to why is it that you say, like, for example, 10 years ago in the England team, you had, like you say, Leanne Sanderson, Eni Aluko, Anita Asante, in the England team, but now there's not, you had maybe 5 or 6 of black players or in the England team, but now it's not as much. Where is the disconnect? So what's happening at, like you say, at the academy or in the regional training centre level, that we're getting to a point where you're not seeing that many players, of colour or black players, perhaps coming through. What's interesting is that there's not I don't think there's much monitoring in terms of numbers. And like how you have with, for example, everyday jobs, there's monitoring of, who applies, who gets the job in terms of, whether they're from a minority background, whether it's, minority non-white background, or do they have a disability. Whereas I guess with football, it's about talent, isn't it? It literally does come to there doesn't seem to be an interest in monitoring. And I guess it's also something that coaching is another issue as well, where that's, but the FA, I guess, is trying to address that with its diversity code, and it's just maybe one of these things that's going to take some time.
But the way I see it is, and this might sound a bit controversial to people, and I don't want to be like that, but we had hope, and that's when we had all those kind of the names that you mentioned. I mean, I know under Marc Sampson we did have him, but that's when it all dropped off, and we know what happened under him, and it's like it's never been addressed. I know as a there's things there that I know still, and I'm thinking, well, what happened after that? What happened after that? And he's sat in Parliament, well, what's happened from that? And I get it, they're doing the diversity code, but it's not as clear, I think, when that happened. But then I look at Hope, and I've read something recently. You said you've interviewed and you know her and stuff, and she said she went for a job that was like above, so it would have been sort of monitoring, like you say, the sort of pathways and all that kind of thing, but someone else got it. And I just think seeing Hope, and I mean, she's doing great at Brighton anyway, so she probably thinks stuff for you guys, but a job like that, she was fully qualified for it. She had done in England, and it maybe didn't end as well as people want, but for me, I think I still look at her. I remember one of the first games I went to Brighton, and I just wanted to see her, and because it inspires me so much, and I didn't even watch women's football for all that time, but I still knew Hope Powell was that England manager. And then you're hearing the men's game stuff about Rooney Rule, and you're saying about not monitoring. Do you think they missed a trick, England, the FA, were not giving Hope that top job? And, it might have been, I'm not saying she should be handed it, but she's even says that she's disappointed she didn't get it, you know, a step above, sort of looking at, like you say, developing the youth talent. I don't know who got it, but it's sort of upsetting. Not upsetting, but you know what I mean. You want to see her. She did so well at England. Why couldn't she have got that job? I mean, what's your thoughts, Sandra? I know I touched on a few things.
Yeah, I'll have to read the article. Whereabouts did you read it?
I think it was The Athletic.
Yeah, I'll have to have a look and see and just into that. I mean, with Hope Powell, she's so influential, you know, and highly regarded right across the game in terms of the knowledge, the experience she has, you know, in terms of the growth of the women's game. But but I think she still does. I mean, she's someone that still works with the FA and has had input into things like the diversity code. I think with that, it's like, me personally, I just want to see what happens with this. Will it lead to more, you know, people, you know, non-white, black coaches, for example. I'm talking about coaches now, but moving slightly away from players, but non-white, you know, minority ethnic coaches, getting the, you know, whether it's managers' role or assistants' roles, getting the opportunities to get into those jobs. I mean, at lower level, there's more, but as you higher up, there's less from what I've seen. But you know, this is one of these things.
Do you think, Sandra, something like the Rooney Rule would be good, or do you think no, we shouldn't do that? We don't need that.
I think see what happens with this diversity code first of all. Give it a couple. I mean, it's 1 year now, isn't it? Give it another year or so, and then I guess holding people who came up with the idea and you know this plan to account. You know, are the people who, for example, you know, they've got the I think that you know a program they've had where they've been putting black and minority ethnic coaches on placements. How many of those, you know, coaches who've done these placements, how many of them have now gone into jobs after that? I think it's maybe seeing what happens with this diversity code and seeing how many people enter these jobs, you know, whether it's the lower leagues, but then also at the higher levels as well of the game.
Yeah. I just want to touch back on something that you said before, Sandra, about it being a bit more middle class now.
Yeah,
and I read something in The Athletic. It was it was probably last year, and it was a lot of players were discussing about growing up, I'd say, being in the England camps, being in maybe other RTCs that are people of colour. I know people don't like that term, but like black and Asian individual girls. And it was more a case of that kind of unconscious bias, that kind of, how can we say it? Uncomfortable conversations. How can I say, what are they called? Microaggressions that they got. Look, can I touch your hair? Why don't you want me to touch your hair? Oh, let's do this. Oh, what are you eating? I've never seen that before. Oh, it smells your food. You know, those kind of things. What are your experience of speaking to players or knowing of players? You don't have to name any names. No one's ever say that. But what's your experience of that kind of thing? Of, like you say, the microaggressions, the made to feel maybe not welcome. Do you hear players saying things like that, or not as much, or more so?
Not had a chance properly to interview players on that so far. You know, I've spoken to coaches, but not the players as such in terms of the microaggressions. I have read, you know, a couple of things. I think, you know, some players have said, well, someone's made comments about the skin, the tone of the skin. You know, to one particular black player about the shade of their skin and what have you, but not. I haven't had a chance to speak to anyone as yet about the microaggressions they may have experienced, whether it's, you know, in one particular team or a training centre or in an academy as yet. But I mean, with that type of thing, it's right across. You know, it goes beyond sport, doesn't it? That's the one thing where the not touching of the touching of the hair, your food. It looks, you know, what's that dish you're eating there or whatever, and then, you know, and just kind of sometimes what you get daft questions to do with your you know, your skin tone, your backgrounds and what have you. So, but I've not had a chance yet to properly talk to any players. But I have, you know, it's literally just been about the disconnect between, or what happens at the kind of regional training centre level, and why there's maybe less players from certain backgrounds than there should be.
Do you think? I mean, maybe this is me being very skeptical, let's say, but I just think that that's a easy excuse for the FA to say, oh well, we moved them out and this, you know. I feel like there is deeper things, like you say, coaching. I think Hope was a big person for a lot of young girls, and you know, like we talked about, all the sort of the players that were there. Do you think, and I mean, you were probably in watching women's football more than I was back then, but do you think that the incident with Eni Aluko, I know you might not want to touch it, but do you think that's maybe had an impact as well on maybe young girls wanting to play football? Because if that's happened at the highest level, you know, am I going to be welcome, or do you think no, that hasn't, or do you think that's why we're seeing so many?
Well, a few years ago, I mean, I used to go, you know, around the South London area. There's a couple of like grassroots football projects that I see, and a lot of the you know, and these weren't attached to any regional training centres, but a lot of the players were from Black or minority ethnic backgrounds. So I don't think there's a kind of that girls are put off playing. I think they're there at the grassroots level, but there seems to be something that happens where it tails off. So I don't think, you know, that unfortunate incident has had an effect for girls at a younger level, because there are, when you go to some of these, and I'm sure you've probably seen it in Manchester as well, when you go to some of these grassroots football projects, there are loads of players, you know, from Black and Asian, you know, minority ethnic backgrounds playing, but something happens whereby, you know, and it could be that maybe it might be loss of interest, or maybe they get into a certain point, if they're, you know, they want to become footballers, they get into a certain point and then it tails off, but they're there at the grassroots level. But as you get higher up, there seem to be less of them. But I don't know whether that, I couldn't really judge and say that particular incident's having an effect on girls not, you know, wanting to play the game.
You talk about the giving the FA a chance. How long would you give then? How long would you want before you'd want to see an improvement, maybe in the level of diversity in the WSL?
I mean, it's a lot. That's something. It's a lot of work, isn't it? Basically, that's a lot of. I think. I mean, I'd like to see what happens next year with the code. Like, they've expanded it, not just beyond the WSL. They're now doing it right across. Different right across the women's football pyramid. So I'd like to see what happens with that, what the figures say, maybe at the end of next season, and the season after that. Is it one of these things that, is it genuinely making a difference, or is it just a tick box exercise that we've done this, we've done a bit, and you know we've tried, so to speak. So I want to see what the outcomes are, and also I guess hearing from coaches who've been involved in the placement schemes that the FA set up last season or last year, and just seeing what their experience have been. Have they been able to find work, or, you know, after being on these placement programs?
I think it was Farah, wasn't it? Is it those programs? Farah, Rachel Yankee was one of them. Was it in England?
Yeah, there's that, and I think there was another scheme that the FA set up, which was attached to its diversity code, where I think coaches were doing placements with in the men's game, certainly. So it'd be good to see right across the board how many people, you know, end up finding some form of work after being on these placements.
I'm going to ask her, I don't think it's difficult, but what do you think of the media's role then? I know you're in the media. Do you find that emphasis is put on, and if there's sort of stories, like I said, about the microaggressions, if players want to talk about certain things and their views, or even sort of a player who probably didn't make it due to whatever reason, do you find that there's that support in the media to do stories like that, or do you find that a lot of it is like women's football, we want it to grow, so we just want it to grow no matter what kind of thing, and we'll catch diversity up later, and we'll catch all these kind of things up later? What do you find from a media point of view, I suppose?
Well, let's see. If you think about it from, say, maybe, like, say, 5 years ago, okay, the game wasn't on Sky and the BBC 5 years ago, or you know, like maybe say 10 years ago, you might not have had say 10 years ago, for example, you might not have had the discussion about microaggressions, or you might have had to talk about racism, but maybe not to the extent. Now I think people are more comfortable coming forward, more open. It's not more forthcoming and in kind of trying to tackle it head on. That's not to say that it's going away. I mean, it's something that needs to be addressed, and it's with microaggression and racism, whether it's in sport, wider society, it's there. And I mean, you only have to look at what's happened, for example, in cricket, to know that recently the stuff that's going on in cricket, that it's one of these things that needs to be addressed. What's positive is that people are quickly calling it out. You're not just brushing it under the carpet saying chip on the shoulder or it's banter. No, it's not banter. If it's racist, it's being called out, more or less, which is, I think, progress compared to, say, maybe 10, 15 years ago when it was just like, brushed off. I mean, what are your thoughts on it?
My thoughts, I think, is it's progress, because I suppose, like you say, I'm more interested. I want to talk about it more. But I do think there is a kind of way there. It's sort of everything's positive in the women's game, and there is kind of, I've noticed from when I started watching in 2018 to now, it has sort of changed. Criticism, they want more kind of thing because it's going on Sky and it's on BBC, and if someone makes a mistake, it's thing. But I think when I noticed it, it was the Euros, and it was around that time when they were taking the knee and it was coming out, and England were being booed, and a lot of people, everyone was saying, oh, well, that won't happen in the women's game. And I said, yeah, it won't happen in the women's game, but let's not look at the women's game like it's a champ. It is great. The women's game's great. We've got players that are out, players that can be themselves. I think there's even talk like there's a trans player, in Canada, and it's great. But then I just thought, let's not look at the women's game and think that racist abuse doesn't happen, or, Lauren James got sent racist abuse. I know other players potentially, if they make a mistake, whether it's a man or a woman, they'll still get sent abuse because of the colour of their skin. And that's what I sort of thought. I thought booing is booing, wherever someone boos the knee, that's them. Let's not, the deeper issues are the sort of online abuse, and if it happens to a woman. So Brobbey, I know it happened to her, and she sort of didn't want to press charges. Fair enough, that's up to her. But the comments I saw after it, and I thought, no one's really talking about this. And it was a lot of, well, did it even happen? And I thought, well, what, is it even that bad? And I just thought, those kind of online trolls. And I think we're quick in the women's game when someone says they don't like it, and it's like, no one likes women's football. A million people watch. That's great. But things like I said, when Lauren James got sent abuse, I think there was a lot of rallying around. But for example, Rennie Hector, when she got abused by a player, and I know that was in 2018, but there wasn't as much support then, and it's not as much media coverage. And yes, it was still growing, and maybe if it happened today, it would be, but I'm not as confident that there would be as much support. But then when someone says, like I said, they don't like women's football, everyone seems to be on it then. I don't know what your opinion is on that.
The online abuse is ridiculous. It's pathetic when someone's coming to footballers' accounts and just posting monkey emojis, banana, and just putting nonsense that they wouldn't have the guts to say it to their face. It's that there. It's ridiculous. I don't understand the kind of the logic or what's going on in someone's brain when they want to go and post those things in someone's account. And that's an issue. That's a real problem that really needs to be addressed, because I guess no one wants, when particularly if you like going on there, it's where you're chatting to your mates or friends or whatever, or even the fans. The last thing you want to see is when you log on there and there's a bunch of banana emojis and loads of abuse. It's not, it's just, so that in itself, I think really needs to address. And then things like you say, that you can't, when someone's been abused on the pitch, and it's proven, and if it's a player like you're saying, Rennie Hector's case, it shouldn't be brushed under the carpet. It needs to be addressed. And I guess, when these things occur, you have to address, you have to tackle it head on and acknowledge that, particularly if it's something to do with racism you know, or any form of discrimination, it has to be addressed. You can't just brush it under the carpet and then, you know, look at what causes it. But the online abuse is something that's ridiculous, and it keeps happening, like you say. And you mentioned Sola Babajide, obviously Lauren James, and a few others who've all had that nonsense posted, you know, or directed at them online, which is just not fair. When, you know, at the end of the day, you're just doing your job, playing the game.
No, yeah, and I think, I mean, I know with I don't know if you've heard of Rennie, but I know she was saying that she wanted to.
The Watford player, yeah,
the Watford player, and you know, I know at the time Spurs weren't professional, but she was saying there wasn't that support, and she wanted to, you know, she said she was feeling suicidal, and yes, potentially now in a full-time team, and there's more support around. But do you know of, like, if it did happen to, again at a lower level, what support would be there for players if, you know, something like that happened? Like you said, I feel like it is just hushed up kind of thing. I mean, I know with that it was sort of quiet, and then she was found guilty, she denied it, but it was just all, and no one's ever talked about it again. I'm not saying we should bring it up, but it does sort of worry me, that, because I feel like at the lower levels there isn't the Sky cameras, there isn't the BBC, there isn't all that kind of, you know, articles being mixed. If it happened at tier 4 or 5, I worry what would happen, because even in the men's game we're seeing, you know, someone saying they walked off the pitch, but then the FA are fining them for walking off the pitch. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Just what's your opinion on that? And suppose like the grassroots people playing football and maybe not having good experiences.
You hope that if an incident occurred, and, you know, it's indisputable that the club, like, would rally around and support the player and what have you, and then follow the appropriate steps they need to if they want to bring a complaint or to have the situation investigated, you know, find out what was said, what would happen, and that you'd hope that there would be support for a player if they reported an incident that happened on a pitch. You know, whether it's another player that's made a you know, like you say, if it's racist comment, or whether it's something that's come from, you know, from the terraces, from the fans. Yeah, I mean, it's that kind of thing. It's one of these things, again, if it happens, it has to be addressed. If it's found that someone's found guilty of doing that, then they have to, you know, be punished. But yeah, you'd hope that it's not just swept under the carpet and someone's told, you know, just get on with it, and, you know, it's fine, brush it off. You shouldn't have to put up with that. You know, when you're playing, you're just, at the end of the day, you're playing the game, you're playing for your team. Racist or any form of kind of, you know, bigoted abuse shouldn't be coming into it.
Yeah. Sandra, I'd just like to touch, I suppose, on your opinion, your feelings of being a journalist, of reporting on women's football. Like I said, I know you, and I'm going to say a name wrong now, for Mudo, who's at the Telegraph, but that's it. That's the only two that I know. I know myself and Rodney are like fans that are big and active about it. What's your view on seeing in the media, or say seeing fans and seeing diversity in the stands, etc.?
I'd like to see more. I'd like to see more. I really would like to see more. It's my view. It'd be good to see, yeah, more people from, you know, more women, definitely, but definitely more, you know, Black women, Asian women, and I'm glad. What I enjoy seeing is I'm enjoying seeing more coming through, and there are more coming through. But I would like to see more. And I like the fact that you've got, you know, in terms of managers and coaches. I like the fact you've got some, for example, someone like Manisha Taylor at QPR, assistant head of coaching in their academy, the first woman of South Asian descent to do that job at that league. So I just want to see more in the media, more people like yourself just out there. They're present. They're talking about you know, in terms of football, talking about the game, and like you say, talking about these issues. But I just would like to see more, definitely.
No, I don't think I'll be in a press box anytime soon, but I think, you know, you'll always see me talking and asking questions like this. That's why I thought, you know, I've got to do this, because, I mean, I'll touch on one thing that Viv, I think she's called Viv Williams. I've got a name wrong, from Brighton, and there was a
Victoria Williams.
Victoria Williams, and there was a video, and this is what I approached you about, and it just made me think, wow, she's like me. Everything she said, she's brought up by pretty much in a white area. She's mixed race. She's learning about different things as she's growing up. But then she did talk about the players that were there in that England setup, and that really inspired us. So I think, we need to see more diversity at the top. Because I was never good at football, but if someone like her was inspired by it, then, it would definitely inspire other kids, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and it's good to see, like, in the league in itself, people like Victoria Williams, obviously Anita Asante, Leisha and Dow, all the talented players, like you say, it gives girls, I guess, coming through, role models to look up to. And just, if they're thinking, was it for me? Then, but you're right. I think I want to see more across the board, whether it's, on the pitch, off the pitch and what have you. I think it would be good.
Yeah. I'm going to wrap it up. Sandra, thank you so much. You're always welcome back on. Do you want to touch just quickly on your views on Man United this season and what you think of their fans? Just if anyone thinks, Sandra, should I follow you?
Yeah, the Man United fans are funny because you're probably the loudest I've heard when I've gone to, I think it was one Tottenham game I went to last season. No, before, just before, the season was cut short, 2019-20, and I think I went to a game at the Hive, and the noise from the Man U fans was just great to hear. It was really vocal, but also I think you were still in there for that Champions League spot, definitely. Yeah, and obviously, Marc Skinner's talked about how he wants to strengthen in January. Like, it sounds like he's determined to, like, boost those ranks. Because when you think about it, last season you had in your attack, you still had Lauren James there, and you also had, even though she was injured, you also had Toby Heath, and you also had Christian Press, and that's quite a significant, chunk to lose from your front line. So, I think, obviously you're still well in it for the Champions League, that third place finish, isn't it? Which is looking quite exciting. I mean, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, definitely Champions League. I think it's a target that was set at before even Marc came in. I think we were 1 point off it last year. I know the fan base is keen for Stina Blackstenius to join, Swedish player. Have you heard any news about any transfers yet, Sandra?
Not as yet, but obviously Marc's got his press conference soon. But I mean, it'd be interesting to see who he's thinking, who will come in, whether it be January or summer. I imagine by the sounds of it, he looks like he wants to do some work around the January transfer window. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But we could see more of Ivana Fuso as well. And the thing is, the academy players are really talented, aren't they? Because they seem to be doing really well in the academy and competitions. Really, really talented ones you've got there.
Carrie's just signed a new contract. I think Maz is coming back, Maria Edwards, and Fuso. I think that's someone that the fans want to see a lot more of. Obviously, we didn't see a lot of her last year, but she looks really good, really strong, powerful, direct running, and I feel like that's what we sort of missed a bit. Man United.
It's that thing in the final third, isn't it? Basically, where it's, I guess, more like more power up top, more kind of strength up top with the attack, I think, and then you'll be more or less there, isn't it? Because, like you say, you're only a point away, or from getting, or a couple of points away from getting that third spot. So it just needs just a little bit of fine tuning, and then you'll be there, isn't it? More or less. I mean, what do you think about Marc and his style of play that you've got now, and how do you feel about it?
At the start, I was worried about him coming in. I wasn't convinced on him just because of his record at Orlando, but I think it's taken him a while. The games that we've drawn so far against Spurs and Everton weren't good enough. Obviously, the 6-1 defeat wasn't good enough. And I think he's learning. I think after the Chelsea game, he said, it's only a defeat. Well, 6-1 isn't good enough. He can't sort of say that. And I think he's sort of learned from the backlash maybe that he probably got and realised, like, that won't wash here per se. Defeat's a defeat at the end of the day, but 6-1 is embarrassing. It's not good enough. But I think he's changed. I think he's learned. I think he's shored it up a bit more in the midfield and defence. I like to see, like you say, rotation. I like to see the youth players. For me, I think they're, especially Carrie Jones is ready, Ivana ready. So I'd like to see a bit more of that. Whether he brings in slowly like a Maria Edwards, or I know Kana Solskjaer is a name that's obviously going around a lot, that scores a lot. But I get what he's doing with the kids, because he doesn't want to sort of expose them fully and have all that pressure on them. But it's like you said, we need forwards, and if those are the only forwards you've got to make use of it. And I think a lot of people like to see a bit more rotation, like to see Bo Risa play, because she came in the summer, top quality Norway international, and I don't think we've seen enough of her. So I think he's going to change it slowly. I think it was better versus Arsenal. Wasn't the best, but at least they created chances compared to the other games. And then obviously it's just getting full points out of December, then cracking on. And I think, like you say, Champions League is the aim. If you can win a cup too, that would be even better. But I think I'm not speaking for all fans, but I think for fans, they do want the Champions League over definitely. Everything kind of thing.
Absolutely. That's Man United, isn't it? Always, whether it's the men's or women's, you want that the first time in Europe would be amazing, I guess. And do you think Jess Sigsworth is a miss from your team?
I think it's a miss that we haven't replaced her. And I don't think we made enough signings up front. I think Martha Thomas is a good player, but she seems to play and then get injured, which she's sort of worried about. But I think she's a miss in that she can run and she's direct, but she didn't really score a lot of goals towards the end. So is it, a case of, well, let's bring in someone? And that's the thing. I think the players that left, okay, but it's the fact, like you say, isn't it? They didn't really replace them enough. Lauren James is a miss for me, but we could have replaced her. I don't think anyone was sort of irreplaceable. And that's the thing, isn't it? I think with women's football, we're seeing that, like with Ella Toon's new contract, it's sort of like a four-year plus one. So it's like a 5 year. So it's like a proper Premier League deal. So you've got to sort of tie down for a long period of time now. And that's what I suppose as well Man United fans want to see. Instead of these 1-2 year options, sign them to a 4 or 5 year deal, the top players, which I think we're seeing more of, which I think is better. And that's why I want to see more, like you say, Ivana, tie her down to a 4 year, tie her down to a 4 year deal, 3 plus an option, because as well, she brings that excitement. And, I think she's a very good person. I mean, if you ever get a chance, Sandra, go and interview her, because she is lively and, bringing that Brazilian fire, that Brazilian magic. That's what she says she wants to bring. So, I'm all here for it, all that kind of stuff, because I think she's a fantastic player.
Yeah, and what do you reckon the chances against Leicester in that? The Conti Cup match, you've got the League Cup match coming up, isn't it? I mean, they're going through a tough time then, aren't they? So.
Yeah, and I'm upset. I mean, I know Leicester, Jonathan Morgan, he was the standout. He was the only, I think, or apart from Hope, black coach. And I did want him to do well, and I know him as well. I know the family. I know Holly. I know Michael. I know a lot of them Leicester, because they've got a few players. But it's they've brought in Lydia now, and Heskey's still training them, so it's going to be interesting. Yeah. But I think Man United should have enough for every team that they're playing now to the end. There's no, even Everton away. I think we should still be able to beat them in the Conti. And he seems to be playing Fuso and all in changing the team up. The Conti team, it seems to be more exciting for us fans, especially that City win. But listen, Sandra, I wanted to say thank you so much. If there's any way that people want to find you, I will tag you on Twitter myself. But, if people want to reach out to you, how can they reach you? Through your Twitter handle? Or
so it's at sbroby78. That's my Twitter handle. Yeah, sbroby78. Yeah.
Definitely go and give Sandra a follow. And, if you've got any opinions, like it, subscribe, share, drop the comments in. I'll reply to the comments. But thank you so much. And maybe I'll have you back on, whenever you want to come on, let us know, because, you've been a great guest. And if you want to come on and, see where we go with this diversity code, see what happens, we can talk about it, say, well, we were talking about it last year, and now look, we've not seen it, or look what's happened since. Definitely. Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you very much, Natalie. I hope you have a good evening.
Thank you. You too. See you soon.